This is a native boy from the 1930s that grew up in a native community, eating a native diet far away from modern society. He's what we would call uncivilized. This is a boy that grew up in modern society, eating a modern diet. Notice anything different? The native boy has a strong, wide jaw, a strong, wide face. His teeth are perfectly straight, while the civilized boy, look at his facial structure. His face is narrow, his jaw is puny, and look at his teeth. They barely fit in his mouth. But it's not just this one boy. Today, all of our faces have become like this. Our mouths are smaller than they used to be. Our noses more crooked, our teeth more crowded, our jaws more slack. And it's all because of our modern society and our modern diet. And all of this has led to an epidemic, the epidemic of mouth breathing.
People, and in particular children, who overuse mouth breathing as opposed to nasal breathing, have changes in the structure of the face that, well, to be quite direct, makes them far more unattractive than if they were to mouth breathe.
A normal top jaw should look like this. The arch is wide and U-shaped, formed by the tongue as it rests in the roof of the mouth. When a child habitually breathes through his or her mouth, the top and lower jaws become underdeveloped and set back from their ideal position. This negatively affects the appearance of the face, making the nose look larger and, more importantly, reducing airway size.
More than 50% of kids today are mouth breathers. And it goes right back to the diet because they're eating too many processed foods, too much sugar, and that then leads to, in the processing, in the metabolism.
Our problem right now is overnutrition. We're eating too much and we're eating too much of the wrong thing.
Get rid of refined sugars, refined grains, refined vegetable oils, processed foods.
Our body was made a certain way to run on a certain fuel, and we have been putting the wrong fuel in our body.
Researchers did a cruel experiment on rhesus monkeys where they blocked nasal breathing, and these rhesus monkeys developed facial deformities. Children that are mouth breathers also develop facial deformities. They develop long, narrow faces with inadequate development of craniofacial bones.
Kids that were pretty attractive as kids, and then there's an example of a kid who got a pet hamster. He was allergic to the hamster. He switched, as a consequence, he becomes a mouth breather. And then the characteristic change in the face when one does mouth breathing is that the chin starts to move
the recesses, yeah,
toward the neck, and the rest of the face goes out, but also the eyes become droopy. We want to chewing foods is essential to tooth and mouth and face development. Chewing hard foods, chewing a lot on both sides of the mouth, great for craniofacial development, oral development, and tooth health. These days, many children slurp their food. Many adults slurp their foods. Many adults are eating like babies. And of course, babies, before they develop their mature teeth, before they get all of their teeth in, need to obviously breast milk, which by the way are correlated with a number of other things like cardiovascular health and metabolic health. Chewing foods that require, eating foods that require some chewing and really working at it and chewing away. They have some impressive images in this book of kids that were twins that were raised separately, one by a group that eats a lot of, let's just say, tougher foods that require chewing versus one that's slurping their food. And one kid is literally incredibly attractive, perfect dentiture with no orthodontia or regular dentistry, and the other kid, his teeth is like snaggle.
Wow.
They have the horsey smile.
Even though they've got the same genetic predisposition.
Right. Things like braces, things like headgear, things like retainers are the byproduct of poor breathing.
How mouth breathing is like the coming of Satan. All of these negative effects. Is mouth breathing like actually killing us?
You can exercise all you want, eat all the right foods, sleep 8 hours a night. If you are not breathing right, you will always be sick.
Not only does mouth breathing make you uglier, but it's also shockingly bad for you.
My asthma has been quite bad recently.
Could barely breathe, just really tight chest.
And then all of a sudden, I start to cough. I was short of breath.
I felt like my whole chest was like a balloon that just airing. I couldn't get out.
So it just like instantly, I'm just like, I can't breathe.
If you breathe through your mouth as opposed to your nose,
especially when it's not appropriate, like all through the night, your teeth are really at risk. So cavities and bacteria can grow in your mouth.
You bring in less oxygen, effectively putting yourself into a state of apnea, right? Which is bad during sleep, and guess what? It's bad during waking states also. also. You get less oxygen to your brain. Bad.
You can have tired eyes where you see more of the white of your eyes.
You can get increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, just poor quality and poor quantity of sleep.
The sinuses, you know, we hear my sinuses are clogged. The sinuses are literally these little tubes or channels through which fluid and air can move. They're actually fairly plastic in the sense that they can be modified in terms of their shape. And so people will say, well, I have a deviated septum. Guess what? You should try and emphasize breathing through both nostrils in order to undeviate your septum. Nasal microbiome is particularly well suited to scrub or capture and destroy viruses, bacteria, and even some fungal infections. So in other words, when you're breathing in through your mouth, you're more susceptible to infections.
You look at the experiment he did where he bunged his nose up with 2 earplugs for 10 days. He looked really bad at the end of those 10 days. Within the first day or so, his blood pressure had gone up X amount of points. His sleep was impacted all the time. When he took those earplugs out of his nose, within a matter of hours, his blood pressure started to come back down again and started to feel more himself.
ADHD, sleep apnea, and gum disease. Breathing through your mouth at night can completely destroy your sleep. And when you don't sleep, you get irritated, tired, unfocused. This is why we live in a nation where almost 10% of kids have been diagnosed with ADHD.
When they fix the breathing, the ADHD goes away.
Really?
For the majority of the cases.
But why is this the case? Why do such terrible things stem from mouth breathing when it seems like such a small, insignificant thing?
She was probably, I'm sorry, can you stop breathing so loud, honey? He's like, breathe quietly.
Welcome to Evil Food Supply, and this is how we turned into a population of mouth breathers.
Mouth breather? Yeah, you know, a dumb person, a knucklehead.
We go over a lot of terrible things that big corporations do to us. And if you've been hurt by one of these big corporations, then you can choose to sue them. It's the only way to keep them in check. The problem is, suing corporations is extremely expensive. But not anymore, thanks to Morgan & Morgan. Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm, where you only pay if they win your case. That's right. If you've been hurt by defective products, environmental toxins, or anything really, you can get justice without needing to pay a single dollar out of your pocket. And they are good. Like this case they just won, where a client was offered $50,000, but Morgan & Morgan got them a $1 million settlement. They even recently won a giant case against 3M that could top $12.5 billion over the years, and much, much more. But aside from the money, this picture really sums up what they're about. The firm has over 100 offices across the US and 1,000 plus expert lawyers dealing with all types of cases, including car accidents, negligence, and class action lawsuits. But because they only get paid if they win, they do have to be selective about the cases they take. So pause the video, scroll down, and you can click the link below to go to forthepeople.com/EFS to submit your case now in 8 clicks or less. That's forthepeople.com/EFS and submit your case now. Thanks to Morgan & Morgan for sponsoring this video. We didn't always look like this. If you look at skulls from ancient civilizations, you'll see that they all have perfectly chiseled jaws and straight teeth. No braces or retainers needed. It was the perfect shape for easy, natural breathing. But fast forward to the industrial age of America, and our faces slowly started to degrade. Before the industrial age, babies were usually breastfed for 2 years. Breastfeeding requires a very intense chewing motion. And this chewing motion helps set the bones right in the face, so the baby can breathe easily later in life.
The reasons why our ancestors all had these prognathic, really strong faces, these huge airways, it's because they were breastfed for a minimum of 2 years. And after that, they weren't weaned onto applesauce or baby food. They ate adult food, right? There was no such thing as Gerbers back then, a few hundred years ago. They went from being breastfed to eating adult food, which requires a lot of chewing.
But all that breastfeeding business went down the drain when the big food manufacturers started introducing baby food. Pablum baby cereal, Gerber pureed vegetables, and Nestle's infamous baby formula were all the rage. It was all about quick, convenient meals. Because breastfeeding sucks. Feed your baby these nutrient-void strained peas made by Heinz instead.
A new world of freshness. Bird's Eye Frozen Instant Baby Food. Bird's Eye's unique dry freezing process gives you strained baby foods with fresh food benefits never before possible. So give baby a fresh serving every meal with wonderful new fresh food taste appeal. Get Bird's Eye Frozen Instant Baby Foods, a complete line in your grocer's freezer.
At the same time baby food was becoming more and more popular, so were ultra-processed foods.
And what happens when you eat processed food, especially with sugar, when it's metabolized, it gives off CO2. And that goes through from the stomach to the bloodstream into the lungs, and then it has to be exhaled. And there's so much more of the CO2 than normal that they switch from nose breathing, which keeps the tongue on the roof of the mouth, making the jaw grow wide, and the tongue drops. They open their mouth, and the cheeks push in, and they get all crooked teeth, and lots of other problems too. But even just changing the diet has changed how faces grow. So we see more long face syndrome, a lot of kids needing orthodontics, and it all goes back to sugar.
This is Trisha O'Hare, by the way. She's a dental hygienist, and she's actually written a book on mouth breathing called Lip Zip. It's free, and we'll link it below. She really helped out with this documentary. And as these spoon-fed babies gobbled up their slop, their jaws never developed as they grew up, leading to a narrow facial structure, small mouths, crowded teeth, and weak jaws, which led to them becoming mouth breathers.
A face that's not the right shape doesn't work properly.
And it's only gotten worse. Earlier, we showed you a native boy and an industrialized boy from the 1930s, and you already saw a big difference. But take a look at how kids from today compare to kids back then from the early 1900s, or even the 1950s. Everyone has longer faces, crooked teeth, gummy smiles, and a receding chin.
So what happens, especially when we're young, if you breathe with an open mouth all the time, throughout the night, throughout the day, your skeleture and your musculature will start developing to that form, that open mouth form.
Yeah, it's not a good look.
Often it'll be things like a very long, narrow faces, what they call an adenoid faces. And when we look in the mouth, we do see sometimes a lot of crowding because of a very narrow palate and very arched palate as well. All these are generally signs that there may be something underlying that's going on that's making the child or the patient breathe from the mouth or rely on breathing from the mouth more often.
This new facial structure is the norm, but it's not normal. And it led to a cataclysm of health problems we all know and love today. They want you to think that things like ADHD are genetic. They want you to think that this rise in ADHD is normal, that there's nothing you can do about it. So just keep taking this Adderall, please. When in reality, mouth breathing might be one of the factors that plays into ADHD.
Almost all the kids that are diagnosed with ADHD are mouth breathers. And if you just can get them to close their mouth and breathe through their nose, they will actually breathe in and have 18% more oxygen absorbed by their brain. And that leads to deeper sleep. And that way the kids wake up rested. But if they breathe through their mouth the whole night, oxygen drops, they don't sleep in a regenerative level of sleep, and they wake up tired and cranky.
ADHD or not, if you take a kid, deprive their brain of oxygen and deep sleep throughout the night, and then you take that kid and force them to sit in a chair for 6-7 hours, they're not gonna do well.
If you are choking on yourself all night, as so many people do, you aren't resting, you aren't entering stages of deep sleep, which means your body never restores and your body is going to break down.
And then if you take that kid and put them on insanely strong prescription drugs, you're gonna cripple them for life. And guess what? That's what we're doing to about 1 out of 20 kids in America right this second, according to the CDC. And it's not just kids who developed disorders from breathing through their mouths. Adults, especially seniors, are developing sleep apnea at crazy high rates. 9% of the entire US population has sleep apnea, which, hello, is a direct result of mouth breathing.
But there are a lot of people who don't sleep properly and they snore. And what happens to some of those people is they die in their sleep, not because of breathing, but their heart works so hard to get them to take the next breath. They're on their back, their mouth is open, and the tongue falls in the throat. And it blocks the airway, and they don't switch to nasal breathing. And because it's in their throat, the heart has to keep pumping to try and get them to take the next breath. And they don't die from not getting the breath, they die from a heart attack, from overexerting their heart. And if they don't unplug the throat, they die.
But how? How can this simple act of breathing through your mouth be so bad for you? Well, it's simple. It's because breathing, getting in oxygen, is the most important thing you can do, and we are all screwing it up.
If you don't breathe, you're not going to live. So it's really critical to life. The same with needing water and needing food. But breathing is the number one thing we have to do. And we have to do it right because it begins a cascade of things going wrong. Mainly from not getting enough oxygen, to the tongue dropping, to the face changing.
When you breathe through your nose, you're forced to take deeper, slower breaths. This immediately calms down the brain.
What is the physiological response to stress is we clench up, we hold our breath, and then we breathe like this.
Your nose also acts as a built-in air filter. When you breathe in through the nose, any dust, bacteria, and pollen is immediately captured by your nose hairs. Then the air moves into the nasal cavity where it's filtered again, this time by even tinier hairs called cilia. One study showed that people with denser nose hairs had a lower chance of developing asthma. The air is also filtered by your mucus. Breathing through the nose also emits something called nitric oxide, which is a natural chemical made by your nose that kills viruses.
Not only does it help filter air out and heat air, but it helps capture moisture, about 40% more moisture, so you don't have to constantly be drinking water. When I see people jogging and they're breathing through their mouth and they're carrying like 4 different water bottles, they wouldn't need those water bottles if they just learned to breathe through their noses, because the body is designed to capture that moisture. That's what the nose does. And then there's nitric oxide, which is this miraculous molecule that plays an essential role in vasodilation, circulation, and more, and it kills viruses and bacteria.
And because you're taking deeper, slower breaths through the nose, you're also getting around 20% more oxygen than you would with the mouth. More oxygen means your brain is gonna work better. It means that you're gonna perform better at the gym. You're gonna feel more energized.
Coaches in the 50s used to have their runners take a big mouthful of water, run around the track, and then they'd have to spit out that same amount of water into a cup to force them to breathe through their nose, because breathing is so essential to their recovery, their endurance, and their performance.
Think about it. Oxygen is the lifeblood of the human body, and the entire anatomy of your nose was optimized for one thing and one thing only: breathing in oxygen. And yet, all of us are sidestepping this beautifully designed apparatus to breathe with a part of the body that is meant for eating, not breathing. That is why when people switch from mouth breathing to regular breathing, they can notice huge benefits.
You'll see these people, they're mouth breathers.
Can it also change face shape?
Yeah, so there's a wild book called Jaws, A Hidden Epidemic by colleagues of mine at Stanford. There's one case of this young girl who she got a pet hamster, I think it was, got a allergy to the hamster, and literally took this beautiful young girl, and her face just starts aging at a rapid rate. They get rid of the hamster. She goes back to nasal breathing. They do a little encouragement of nasal breathing using the mouth closure thing at night, do a little bit of medical tape, and like these beautiful, almost like model-esque features come back in this girl. Jaw shape and the clear to the nasal passages. This was known in the 1800s. There was a book called Shut Your Mouth by a British doctor who talked about the fact that people who snore sleep like this, and then during the daytime they become mouth breathers. He said they become less attractive than the people who are nose breathers.
For example, if you want the easiest way to have a more defined jawline to make your face instantly more attractive without surgery, just stop mouth breathing. It's free. But because our faces have gone through such dramatic structural changes, switching from mouth breathing to nose breathing is not so simple for some. been breathing through your mouth your entire life, your nose is gonna be more clogged up. But luckily, the more you force yourself to breathe through the nose, the more open it becomes.
The less you use your nose, the less you're going to be able to use your nose, just like any other muscle. So when people start habitually breathing through their mouths, their noses are going to start to close up. And we know this from the doctor of speech language pathology at Stanford. She measured people who had laryngectomies, holes drilled in their throats so they could breathe. She found between 2 months and 2 years, their noses were completely blocked. Zero air coming in. So the more you use it, the more you're going to be able to use it. So the less you use it, the more apt you will be to have problems.
What is the process? Well, why does the nose close up? It would seem that it's a hole. Like, why would that hole close?
It's not in use. Those turbinates, all those tissues just start closing up.
Starting off, if you're not sure if you're a mouth breather, here's what you can do.
The first thing one way to test if you're a mouth breather, now don't get upset about this, but you tape your mouth shut when you go to bed at night. And it's good to tape it like a half hour before you go to bed just to get used to it. Using the clear nasal spray on each side to make sure your nasal passages are open. Then you can tape. And if you are a mouth breather, it would take one night and you will realize that you wake up so much more rested and refreshed. You can tell in one night.
But some people might have to go that extreme. What works for us is to simply think about resting your tongue at the roof of your mouth at all times. This is because if your tongue is resting at the roof of your mouth, you will have no choice but to breathe through your nose. This is what's also going to lift up the skin underneath your jaw, giving you a much more defined jawline. Online, you'll hear people refer to this as mewing to make your face more attractive, and it really does work from our experience. Another thing that really helped us breathe better is cleaning up our diet, or any other environmental things that might be causing you allergies, like that story of the girl with the hamster. Back when we were eating normal, our nose would always be clogged up and we would assume we just always had allergies. So we would constantly down allergy pills for haphazard results. The moment we cut out all the fake food and opt in for only real organic whole foods, our allergies magically cleared up. We had never known what it was like to breathe this easily before. And when it comes to the act of breathing itself, 5 to 6 seconds in and 5 to 6 seconds out seems to be the perfect ratio.
What is the perfect rhythm to breathing in?
It depends on who you are. I've learned a lot more about this as well.
Okay.
But a good first place to start is this 5 to 6 seconds in, 5 to 6 seconds out.
So in summary, try taping your mouth shut before bed to see if you're a mouth breather. Focus on mewing, always having your tongue rest against the roof of your mouth. Clean up your diet and your environment in 5 to 6 seconds in and 5 to 6 seconds out. And you want to know what else is terrible for you that we all use? Toilet paper and other paper products in general, like paper towels. These products are made from trees, obviously. But have you ever wondered why these paper products are super bright white? Trees aren't naturally that white. That's right, that Angel Soft paper you wipe on your butt is so white and so soft thanks to a lot of bleach and other toxic chemicals like formaldehyde. And we expose it all, along with our personal recommendations, in our latest newsletter that you get right now by scrolling down and clicking on the second link in the description. It takes less than 15 seconds. The Evil Food Insiders newsletter is where we get to alert you on breaking news when it comes to our food supply straight into your inbox, along with important knowledge like this that might not warrant a full documentary. And the feedback we're constantly getting about the newsletter has been amazing. And you can be a part of it by clicking the square on the screen or by clicking the link below and simply typing in your email.